There's a spirit of energy and vigor in the mountains that the mountain man sought to find. And today, that spirit's embodied in Laramy Miller, Sasquatch. He springs from the era when the trails were new and survival hinged on the ability of a man to make his own way in the wilderness. Sasquatch kindles the spark of the time when men in buckskin roamed these summits. He leaves his prints where no one has since centuries before, hunting for the old spirit of the country, living by his own devices, meeting the wilderness on its own terms. So he rides the trails in search of the dream of outer solitude and lives the way men once did on the trail of the mountain man. Across the old maps, there is one place with the densest population of moose on the continent. For Laramy Sasquatch Miller, moose country has been a challenge, not least because of the harsh weather. But you've got to say that some of the problems have been of his own making.
Knowing my luck, now I'm going to see a big moose. My powder's probably wet, and my gun's gonna misfire.
And like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a young moose appears out of the thick bush. And, as Laramy predicted, his soaked Hawken fails to fire.
That used to be gunpowder. Now it's powder paste.
It's not in Sasquatch's nature to give up, though, and he carries his hunt on through the territory of the moose, determined to set the scales right. Days and nights on the trail stretch forth, and as Laramy calls and stalks, once again the skies blacken and weather sets in, threatening the chance of another misfire. After the rain comes the wind, which may be even worse for hunting.
Watch over there, and that wind's whipping in that meadow. What that does is that makes these moose, they just want to stay in the woods. They don't want to come out because it lowers all their senses. Everything starts moving so they can't see very well. They can't smell anything because the wind's blowing every which direction. They don't move. Makes it tough on us.
As tough as the wind is, the old mountain men faced far worse hardships. The mountain man's quest for the golden fleece, which is what beaver pelts were, drove him deep into the traditional and ancient country of the Indian. Here, he was an interloper, and the true lords of the land were the red men. Proud, noble warriors they could also be vengeful attackers if they caught a mountain man in their realm. Their bows and arrows and lances could be more savage and deadly than a single-shot rifle. And a mountain man killed by a primitive weapon was the lucky one. Taken alive, he could face scalping, flaying, fingers chewed off by Indian women, ears torn from his head, torture by fire, severed organs stuffed into his mouth as he bled to death. All that was just part of the cost of doing business in the fur trade. Laramy's kept his scalp up to now, but the task of taking a moose still remains undone. This cow means a bull might be close behind. And sure enough, weather and wet powder have conspired against Laramy Sasquatch Miller on his hunt for moose. Now he's spotted a cow, meaning a bull is sure to follow. Bull just has to stop for an instant.
Didn't stop.
To relieve the frustrations of wayward moose hunting, Laramy lays down his Hawken and picks up his longbow. He'd like to be able to put some chicken in the pot.
You know, it's pretty neat. You look, this is an old-timer's refrigerator. This is probably 150 years old, maybe 200 years old. What they did is they used to put all their goods, their meat, whatever they wanted to stay cool, they'd put it down here. And the thought is you get down underground, and they use this, still use it in a lot of places, but it keeps it about 20 degrees cooler than it is outside, and it won't let it freeze in the winter. So acts exactly like a refrigerator. Pretty cool.
There's a rough grouse right there.
For Laramy, like the old mountain men, finding fresh meat is vital.
You know, being a mountain man's not all it's cracked up to be all the time. You might go long periods of time without eating or eating very little. You got to learn to ration your food. I've got 2 potatoes left. The big game hunting's been horrible. Small game hasn't been much better. I got to figure something out.
With hunting slow, Laramy has time to work on his gear back at the cabin.
This right here is a pair of buckskin pants that I made. They're made out of elk skin, an elk that I killed last year.
Laramy's tools are the traditional ones of the leather worker, skinning, and draw knives. With them, he carries out the long process of fleshing the hide to remove all the fat and meat, drying and scraping over the course of many weeks.
If you don't work the hide right, you're going to wind up with big hard spots all over it, gouges, holes. All your work's going to be for nothing. If you look, this is a perfectly done hide. It's soft all over, there's no hard spots, there's no gouges, no holes. It's beautiful. It's a beautifully done elk hide.
A genuine bone needle is what's needed for sewing elk hide.
See, I made a little notch all the way around, and that's for a specific purpose. I'm finishing it off with some belt loops. The mountain men back in the day, they didn't really have a belt loop per se. They wore their belts on the outside of their big coats. Well, I like to have a belt loop. I can't stand when my pants are sagging down, so. And then I'm gonna put a couple buttons so that I have my flap. I just wanna mark this right here so that I know where to poke my holes for the horn. And to make sure that that stays on, and I'll put a little dab of hide glue on this knot on the horn, and that way the leather stays on that horn. Now if you look right there, that's the bullet hole from where this elk lost its life to give me these pants and feed me all winter.
Take a look out over this vista. You're seeing the place with the densest moose population in North America. As abundant as the moose are, Laramy Sasquatch Miller has struggled to get a shot at one.
Didn't stop.
Laramy has a big bull in a distant meadow, but what can't be seen is that there is no straight line to it.
Exactly what I was afraid of happened. Spotted a bull about, 2.5 miles, way over there. And of course, I've got to go after him. But it's not just 2.5 miles. Got to go all the way around the lake. This ought to be fun. Been about an hour and we're halfway, so hopefully he's still there when we get there. If not, it's going to be a long, cold night.
See, what happened was, just walked about 5 miles to get over here and realize that I'm gonna have to climb across the lake in order to shoot it. I thought we walked around the lake, but turns out there's 2 of them. And this one's another 5 miles out of the way to get around it. I think we have a better chance of getting to him by calling him across the lake.
Laramy might as well regroup and make camp. And he turns, as he always does, to traditional methods, building a genuine wickiup from natural materials.
This is what you call a wickiup. What it is, it's like a miniature teepee. What I did is I took the sticks, I tied them with a willow at the top and tied them real tight. Then I laid pine boughs underneath because I like how pine boughs hold the warmth in. And then I layered it with grass on the outside. But the Indians, they mainly used to just wrap it with grass all the way around, really thick. You see tribes in Africa still do this. They make wickiups the exact same way as the Indians used to. And it's gonna make me a nice little home for the next couple days.
With shelter and a bright campfire, Laramy now only needs a bull moose to step into range of his Hawken. Land of the Moose, a place of bright waters. Laramy Sasquatch Miller, needing meat for the winter, has faced misfires and bulls who will not cooperate. Winter's coming, and he must put something on the ground. Despite some recent bad history with canoes, Laramy knows that if he's going to find a bull, he needs to dip his paddle into the river and glide along the water highway.
The best way to get into true wilderness is by canoe, because you have no roads, you have no trails, but there's always rivers. And that's the way the mountain men did. They traveled up and down hauling their pelts from one place to another, and a lot of it was either horses or canoes.
It doesn't matter what animal you're calling. It always varies. It all depends on what mood that animal is in this case, what mood that bull's in. If he's not really in the rut and doesn't really care too much, he might not come in, or it might take him a couple hours to come in. But if you can get them fired up, they usually come pretty quick.
Looks like Bullwinkle and his girlfriend are hanging out in here.
The thing about buckskins, as Laramy knows, is that they make for silent stalking.
Look right over there. There's something in the brush.
Those gewgaws in the moose's antlers show he's been tearing at the brush in a rutting fury. clean ignition and a solid hit.
Now the real work begins.
Cleaning, skinning, and quartering a 1,200-pound moose is a Sasquatch-sized job. Just the hide alone can weigh over 100 pounds. From moose country, Laramy has far more of a continent to trek and more game to seek.